So as you're informing the school about all of these different things, I have had several friends who've had the experience that the schools threatened to suspend their children for running off campus because they said, well, that's what we'd do for any other kid, is we'd suspend them. And to me, I heard that and I just thought, that's ridiculous. He's in second grade and he's got autism. What good is suspending him gonna do? Because I'm like, if you look at it from his perspective, I run away from school, then I get 3 days off. Let's see, what is the downside to this? You have to look at how they're reinforcing the behavior, because we always do things that reinforce good behavior, bad behavior. Our kids react off of us a lot of ways. Just behavior in general is shaped by the reactions that we have to situations that happen. So if your child runs away and then the consequence is that he gets 3 days off of school, from his perspective, he gets a free 3-day break. Hallelujah. That's not going to teach him how, it's very serious that if you run off campus, that's not okay. That's not what he's going to get from that lesson. He's just going to be like, sweet, I get a couple times off. Because the kid has to have that sense of, oh, I'm being punished. And a lot of times, particularly Aiden, he really doesn't care. Like putting him on timeout was a joke because he'd sit there and he'd count like all the bumps on the walls, or he'd look at I don't even know what he was doing. He'd look at all the dust motes. He was totally entertained the whole time from timeout. It wasn't effective. And, same thing with suspending a kid with autism. They're not going to get the same message that a typically developing kid is going to get. All they're going to see is what ended up happening to me out of this. The existential, I want to please adults, I want to make them happy. That's not always there with these kids with autism. And so to try and rely on that to use as a form of punishment, it's not effective at all. So if your kid's anything like mine, then you have to let the school know that suspending is not going to do any good. So then the next thing the school needs to be aware of, if you are to the point where they are threatening to suspend your kid, is that it's also their responsibility to help keep your kid safe. You safely transport them to school, leave them at school, and trust that they are going to keep your kid safe just like any other kid. There's no reason why they should be able to sit there and say, well, this is your fault and you need to talk to your kid. I can sit there and talk his ear off and he's not going to pay any attention to me if I tell him don't run at school, because I'm not there in the moment for him to be able to correlate what I'm saying with his actions. And I'm not there to see what led up to those actions. The school is. And so they have a responsibility to keep your child safe. So when I went into that meeting with the school where they sat me down and there was, me and my husband were there, but then they had the principal and the teacher and the school counselor and the advisor who was there. And, they called me out of work to come and deal with this and, all these things. So I sat down and they're like, well, what are we going to do about this? And I said, well, why did this happen in the first place? How did he get away? That's what I want to know. I want to know how he got away from 4 adults that were supposed to be watching him. And all of a sudden they were like, whoa, 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 And so I was obviously emotional about it. I believe I started crying in the meeting, but I was really mad. And my husband had to be like, calm down, it's okay. But definitely had the mama bear claws come out. So don't feel like if the school is making you feel terrible that your child is running off, that you can't turn the table on them as well, because it's their responsibility to keep your child safe while they're at school. Now, you as the parent may know more. You know your child, which is why they're calling you in. Do not feel like you are there to take your punishment. You should not feel like that, even though they are making you try. Don't have that mentality when you walk in. If anything, you need to have the mentality that the school needs to be accountable and tell you, the parent, we're sorry that he got away, but we don't know exactly how to deal with this anymore. Can you please help us come up with a plan of action for if this happens again? And like I said, you can go back to the other suggestions that I made. So then you have some information to walk in and tell the school, you can try this, you can try this, you can try this. And then you don't have to feel so helpless. It's not just your job to keep your kids safe. Remember that. The school is taking responsibility for him. Kids have to attend school. They have to get an education. And if your child is doing well enough that they're in a mainstream classroom, but they're still running off when they get upset, the school is still responsible for keeping that kid safe, just like they would any other kid. So if they bring you in and want to make you feel like they're putting you through the ringer, just remember, it's not only your job to keep your kids safe. Okay? It's not just your job. Now, we always want to try and be polite and have a good working relationship with the school because, ultimately my kids are going to be at that school for another, he's in second grade right now, and that goes through. So 6 more years, I have to deal with the same principal. I have to deal with the same PE teacher. I have to deal with all the same, people every year. And so you don't want to go in and just burn bridges or things like that. But you do want to have a little bit of that reputation of, oh no, here comes this mom again. Again, by being proactive and letting the school know that this is the issue and this is what's going on, you are letting them know that you are a partner in this and that it's their responsibility and you're there and you want to help to get this situation under control because you want to keep your kids safe too. But ultimately, it's the school's responsibility while he is during school hours. So that's what can help to keep things from devolving. Is that a good word? Devolving into an unpleasant situation for you, for your child, because suspension should never, ever, ever come up as an issue for a kid with autism. They should never suspend a kid with autism for running away. They should be stopping and looking at what caused it and what can we do to fix it. If you've got a diagnosis, that is a huge amount of protection for you in that situation. For sure. Wave it around, use it, drop the A word all the time. ASD, ASD, ASD. You're not dealing with just any other student. This student is a great student, but he has autism. He has a disability. He needs special attention. And you can always call an IEP meeting to revise things. They can have certain behavior plans in place to deal with if the kid runs away or if there's problem behavior and a meltdown. At one point, Aiden had to get carried from the classroom when he was having a really hard day. And so they have, it listed out like exactly how they will carry him from the classroom. And, they will use 2 adults and they will put their hands underneath his armpits and, lift him up and escort him from the classroom. Like they had it all written out in detail. So just know these are things that all schools can do. If your school is just not as aware of that yet, they haven't had to deal with it, guess what? They will in the future. Autism is everywhere. The first one that they've had to deal with, just take comfort in the fact that everyone else after you is going to have a much easier time. Sometimes it's a little consolation, but that's what I'm having to do at my school. Every year I have new teachers and every year we encounter new problems. And this year, again, the teachers both said, I've never had a student who's been diagnosed with autism. I've had students that have been somewhere on the spectrum, but their parents hadn't had them diagnosed. We may have been suspicious of it, but I've never actually had a student who's been diagnosed with autism. They said they had heard about me and they were excited to work with me this year. So at least it was positive. I hope that they heard about me. Again, that little bit of a reputation of, oh dear. It can work wonders. So we've talked a lot about different options and scenarios and working with the school and trying to make this a good working environment. But if you've tried everything and you just can't get the school to work with you, or they are still threatening to suspend your child, there are a couple of options that you can use. Here in Utah, we have something called the Utah Parent Center, which is an organization that was created by parents of children with disabilities. It's run by parents that all have a child with a disability, not necessarily autism, but they have all walked down that IEP road. They have all walked down that road where you've had to go to meeting after meeting and re-explain about your child's disability and the pros and the cons of having your child there. So you're talking to kind of a kindred spirit when you're getting information from them. And they are also experts in education law. So they are a great resource. So just Google Utah Parent Center. And if you don't live in Utah, I'm sure they could still point you in the right direction or help you find an organization similar to yours that's in your state. But the Utah Parent Center is an excellent resource. And if things really get bad, there's also the Disability Law Center. I don't know if that's something that's spread from every state, but that's what it's called here in Utah, is the Disability Law Center. And they provide legal information, counseling, and if necessary, legal representation to help you with problems in the educational system for your child if they're being treated unfairly or if the situation is unsafe. I hope that you don't really have to get to the point where you call the Disability Law Center. But again, if you do need them, they are fantastic. They are great. And education, fair housing, those are, there's several other things that they really champion there. We actually had to utilize the Disability Law Center for a fair housing situation, but that's a story for another day. But I do have experience with them, and they were fantastic and they were super helpful. And it was really nice for me because there's no charge for their services. You just have to have a member of your family. It just has to be in the support of somebody who has a disability. Like I said, I hope you don't have to get to the situation where you need the Disability Law Center. But if you do not hesitate to call them. Good luck with back to school. We can all make it through it. Just have to get through the next few weeks. But I hope you guys are all having a great night, and I hope you found this information helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave your questions or advice in the comment section. Please feel free to subscribe to this channel so that you can get notifications when new videos come up. And if you found this video helpful, feel free to leave a like. It makes it easier for other people to be able to find the information that they need as well. So anyway, have a good night, you guys, and we'll talk to you later.